Hello, everybody. Welcome to Technically Creative, our conversation with Georgia Tech alum who are now working in the creative fields. And I'm really excited today by having us have a chance to talk to Veronica Klucik, who is the exhibitions manager at the Museum of Design in Atlanta. Veronica, she earned a bachelor's in economics and international affairs from Georgia Tech. And then she went on to get her master's in sustainable urbanism from University College London. She's the co-curator of the exhibition at MODA, Learning from Nature, the Future of Design, which you can still visit virtually on the Museum of Design's website. Veronica, thank you so much for joining us for a conversation today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and just jump in.
So I thought we might start just by talking a little bit about sort of what you mean about design and your approach to what you call the dynamism of design. So can you say a little bit about how that for you unlocks so many important ideas about people and innovation and nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of what I mean when I say the dynamism of design, I really like to think of it as being an entity that's so flexible. Like when you think about it, we are the people that shape design. We're the people who design items, but then the way that we live our lives and our lifestyles are also inherently shaped by design, like how we walk through a city or how we position a lamp or something along those lines, all are kind of dictated by design in some way. So I really love that aspect of it, that it's always kind of like responding and listening and changing and morphing, and that we also have the ability to do that. And so I guess how it ties into like into the social studies and nature and everything. My background, as you said, is in economics and international affairs, which is really interested in the study of people and essentially like the decisions that we make and how we interact and everything. And so to kind of look at that in terms of design as well, we kind of see that come into play as well with all of these different I guess streams. I can't think of a good word for it, but all these different kind of like streams and systems that come into play, and just kind of and when we turn to nature as well, we see that come into a whole nother level of complexity when you factor in natural systems into our built systems and into our societal systems and everything like that. So yeah, that's pretty much why I love it, because it's so complex and so like ever changing.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. But I guess first we should can you give some examples or talk about that nature and design component, because there is so many interesting ideas that are exploring in that exhibition that clearly fascinated you as well as the folks you worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're talking about the exhibition Learning from Nature, it looked specifically at biomimicry, which is essentially where we kind of turn to nature and see what strategies it kind of uses to solve these day-to-day problems that it faces, such as flooding or whenever the rain falls, how nature kind of deals with that and different habitats, which we can then apply to, say, in a city. We also have flooding and we experience heavy rainfall, and so we might try to figure out we want to handle that by turning to nature and seeing how it efficiently moves water throughout land, and when there's too much, or things like that. So that's kind of one aspect of it. But then looking forward to another exhibition we have coming up called Full Circle, which looks at regenerative design. It kind of takes it a step further and asks us to consider kind of our place in nature again, and to realize that we're still part of these natural systems. So all of the water cycles that we're a part of and everything, we're still playing into it and we're still affecting it. And so asking us to consider how the things that we build and design affect both how we live, but also how it has an impact on nature and vice versa.
Yeah. I mean, this may be an unfair question, but you talked about how design unpacks all of these other important issues and challenges that we face. So do you often approach your work as where you are struck by a design and start following the threads that it points to, or are you engaging with a particular issue, such as, say flooding or urban development, and then are looking to ways in which both nature and other folks have been using design to address these problems?
That's a great question. I think personally, I tend to do the latter more so. I tend to come in and look at, I guess what you're saying, like problems that are arising and seeing where we can fix them or what's causing them, or all these different components to it. But I definitely think it's also a valid approach to start design first and look at how something is designed or the materials that are in it, and see why it was designed in that way and if it can be improved and how as well. So I think it kind of depends, but for me personally, I do definitely start like more problem first.
I mean, I think that's interesting. One of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, because it sounds like you are very much, using design as this problem-solving methodology for some really serious, engineering or economic or sociological challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, and this is also something that we carry at MODA, but that design has such an influence in our lives, and most of the time we don't really realize it. But because of that, it has such a power or potential to change the world and address these problems. And, even if it may not be in the most common way to approach the problem, it still is a valid way, and sometimes much more like palatable, I guess, of a way to approach a problem or solving a problem than other ways, or in a lot of ways more understandable to some people as well. Because to me, sometimes I feel like design can reach a wider audience than a lot of say academic papers or things like
that. I think you are correct that there is definitely one might be more compelled to look at an exhibition than perhaps read the latest engineering papers. I mean, at least that's just me, but that's right. So, so let's back up a little bit. So, somebody who's at Georgia Tech majoring in economics and international affairs, can you talk us a little bit through sort of this? It's not really necessarily a change, but just the way in which you came to so strongly integrate design into your thinking and your professional career.
Yeah, definitely. So the creativity and design and art has always been kind of like a big factor in my life. Like it's always been, I was always in art classes and things like that, but it was never that like thing for me, I guess, yet. Like the path, it just never really seemed that way. And so when I went to Tech and I started at economics and international affairs, it was the same thing that kind of drew me to that I was talking about. It was the dynamism, the complexity, all of these different moving parts and everything. And then I think it was I studied abroad in Paris while I was at Tech, and it was during that time that I was able to kind of take a few free electives in art and design, and I was in Paris, which is such a beautiful place. And so I kind of started to realize that I really missed having that aspect be a bigger part in my life. And that's kind of when I discovered urban planning and urban design and everything. So kind of my last year at Tech kind of shifted my courses to be around that as much as I could, which then led me to my master's, which allowed me to also like dive into urban design a little bit more and really kind of, I guess, grow that part of me that wanted to use design in these ways. So definitely so interested in the situations and issues that we studied when I was studying economics, but just able to kind of apply a design lens to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you if you remembered a specific moment where that association clicked, but it sounds like it's, that time in Paris and sort of being saturated by the opportunities.
Oh, yeah. And I think, honestly, the metro system there was something that I'd never experienced before. It's so good and so efficient. And I was like, this is wild. Who thought of this? And then that is kind of, I was like, oh, this sounds fun.
So then, I mean, this is a natural follow-up, but it was a question we actually we got from the Facebook post about, what compelled you then to become part of a museum staff, and what do you hope to accomplish at MODA?
Well, so that I kind of joined MODA originally as support. Back in 2020, we were doing the climate and change project, and that was supposed to be a year kind of focusing on design and the natural world. And so I originally came on as support for that project, but then as I kind of spent more time in MODA and as more things kind of took shape, MODA is very much likes to employ that same idea of design being a solution, or being able a pathway to a solution to creating a better world for people and the natural environment and just in general. So I think it wasn't necessarily the like museum aspects of it that I came into it, but more of the way that MODA operates and the way that the messages that it shares, and the mission and vision of MODA is just incredible. And so just to be able to come into that and be in that environment has kind of blossomed into this deep appreciation for museums, and especially like MODA and what it does.
Yeah. I guess, can you say a little bit more about like what is that deep appreciation? Because I think, again, like so much of what you described, is so in line with the goals of Georgia Tech as well. So I guess I'm interested to hear sort of, what is that about museums that you admire so much?
Yeah, I think it's a lot about the way that we share stories, and the way that we tell these stories by sharing projects and by talking about these things and these topics, because I think a lot of the time, like topics that we talk about at MODA, or I'm sure at Georgia Tech as well, people know about, but they're kind of like more, when you just talk about them or like read articles or something, it's a lot harder to, again, visualize and see. But then when you start digging into it, you see that there's a lot of people out there that are talking about it and that are actually like doing things and have been making projects about these topics for a long time. And so to be able to kind of highlight those people and celebrate them, and also potentially bring inspiration to someone who's walking through, or we have a really great education program. And so just seeing like our educators being able to share these ideas with these children, and hopefully like, inspiring things in the future. I just think it's a very important task in the greater fight for for good. And so I really appreciate just what the fact that museums do that and can like bring to light a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they really are these hubs for knowledge and inspiration in really wonderful ways. So we had a couple questions come in, really specifically about this job you do, because I think people see exhibitions and curation, and it can feel mysterious sometimes. So Michelle, who's an undergrad at Tech, she wanted to know, how do you curate an exhibit? And do artists come to you with their work? Do you seek them out? Can you talk a little bit about your process?
Mm-hmm. So I think I don't know if I can speak for all curation processes, but as far as the one that we curated with Learning from Nature, we kind of started with an exhibition thesis, which I think is pretty common. Is just come in and start with kind of what you want the exhibition to say and the general topic of what the exhibition will be about. And then from there, you just kind of do a lot of research, and you dive in and see where all these different links lead you, and just see what people are doing out in the world. And then you pretty much just start reaching out to them and kind of start seeing if they're interested. And it's a lot of like, again, it requires a lot of flexibility, because you might have an idea of what you might want to show in terms of one project, but they may not be able to share specific things, but could share like photos or something instead. So you kind of have to be flexible with what you'll be able to show and how you'll be able to present these projects and everything. So it's a lot of that. And but yeah, it's really interesting. It's a very fun thing. You spend a lot of time like learning about these topics and kind of become like a mini expert in the topics.
Yeah, and also from what you're describing, I think curation is such actually a collaborative process. Like, it's not just a single person all the time. Like you really are working with so many different people in so many different areas to make something like this happen.
Oh, absolutely. We, for example, on our Learning from Nature, we worked closely with the Biomimicry Institute and Jeanette Yen, who's a professor at Georgia Tech, because she teaches bio-inspired design at Georgia Tech, and both of them just had so much knowledge and connections, and just ideas of what was out there. So it made it a lot easier and a lot more robust, I guess, of a project with their input.
Yeah, I think you gave a long list of possibilities, but another question we got, Kevin, who's an alum from Georgia Tech, wanted to know, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
Oh, honestly, it's been a minute since we've been able to do this, but my favorite part is when we're in the museum, is we each do a little bit of gallery time when we're also working behind the scenes. So that's honestly my favorite part, is being able to be out in the galleries and, talking to people and hearing their feedback about the exhibitions and what they thought or what this reminds them of, which haven't been able to do as much in the past year or so, but I think definitely that's the thing that I miss the most, and also my favorite part.
Another, I thought, really interesting question we got, shifting gears slightly, but thinking about, all your experiences, you said you become a mini expert in so many different areas. Philip asked, what sectors of technology have not been explored as an art medium that you think will make a significant impact on the modern art community? And I think, being in design, like I do feel like, you do encounter almost so many more sectors of technology than perhaps other art fields would.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's really hard to say, because I feel like there's so much out there that's being done that I've seen in terms of technology, that it's hard to say which one. I don't. This might be a bit biased, but I honestly think that because a lot of our educators work very closely with like video games and programming through video games, and just like computer games. I'm not the most video game kind of person, but just for example, one of our educators uses Minecraft a lot and teaches them to our education team, or our children, and just the potential for those to tell stories and to kind of like build these worlds and be used as a tool to kind of visualize and see. I feel like that's a very strong potential, but then there's so many.
Yeah, there's so many different other directions to take that. I guess I'm interested for you, if you had to go back and and take your tech education all over again, is there something that you feel like you wish you had a deeper knowledge base in, now sort of going into this career path you're in?
I've thought about this a lot too, actually. I honestly don't think so. I think that in retrospect, like part of me does kind of wish that I'd taken more design classes, or taken, maybe gone down more of a design path early on. But I really value the kind of like the skills and the things that I learned from taking a social science approach, and the like tools that I learned through economics and international affairs, I think have really shaped how I view design and like how I use design as well, which, not to say that it would have been any, worse or better if I'd gone a different path, if I'd stuck with design from the beginning. But I think that for me, I don't think I would change anything. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's a great answer, and I think it's a good point that there's, as you just said, all this training for economics and international affairs kind of really gave you this strong perspective to be able to approach these different questions and challenges that are being tackled by the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And for example, a lot of the projects that we did in my graduate studies, when we were looking at urban design and all, they all didn't necessarily require a background in economics, but that like ability, the analysis that you come with economics, or just the being able to think about people's behavior and all, definitely helped shape those projects and kind of determine, or at least for me, it made me feel more comfortable with how we presented them and all of that.
Something else I wanted to ask you was about again, international affairs major. You just talked about how kind of your travel really inspired. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having a global perspective when we're thinking about design, and also some of the differences that you note when you take this more global perspective towards design in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's honestly probably one of the most important things. I studied a lot. I studied in London, which is a big hub for design right now, and has always been. But a lot of the people that I studied with were from places like the Middle East, or from South America, or from Asia, and to just have like those different perspectives, because the way that they approach design, and I specifically know more about city design, like in South America, is much more culturally based. It's looking a lot more at the culture and community and all of that, whereas in Asia, or at least from the things that people have shared with me, I don't want to generalize, but it's much, they have such these wild technology situations where like smart cities are very, very important out there for them, at least from what I've heard in some places. And so, which, even for us in the US, between the US and Europe, there's a big shift in how we look at cities and how we design things, but it's a lot more similar, I would say, than, when you're thinking about someone from Chile who is thinking about how they're going to be able to spend time with their family or see their family or all these things on a regular basis, which we do too, but it's just a little bit different. And so just to have knowledge of how, and just personal experiences of how all of these different things shape how their places are designed, I think is really important to kind of inform how we design ours, because I think with anything, design has to be context specific. I think it's really hard to kind of copy and paste from one place to another and think that it will be successful necessarily. So I think it's hard to do that, but I think it's important to kind of give us insight into different alternatives to how we might want to approach it, or
getting those additional voices and perspectives. And I guess the realization that design is one of the ways in which you can start to approach those conversations, I think is a really compelling message.
Yeah, definitely.
We neglected to mention that actually folks who are on Georgia Tech's campus actually have a chance to see some of this work as well. Do you want to say a few words about where they can go to see that?
Oh yeah, so we have officially, I think as of last week, just finished putting up a very scaled down version of Learning from Nature in the second floor of the Candida building. So if you have some time, I definitely recommend going around and checking out some of those projects. They're really fascinating, and I learned so much about the things that nature does in those projects that definitely worth a stop by, especially if you're just looking for a bit of inspiration.
So as you've been inspired by this work, and having spent both time on campus and in Atlanta, what's one either design idea or principle or concept that you'd really like to see applied, either to our campus or if thinking about the larger Atlanta community?
I am personally a really big fan of the playful city ideas, which we at MODA actually did an exhibition on a couple of years ago before I was with them. And I think actually last time I was at Georgia Tech for the Patrick Doherty installation, somebody mentioned that there will be some playful elements coming in to the Eco Commons, which sound amazing. But I think honestly, like for me, play is really important because, it really opens people up to, being more comfortable and also more innovative, and just kind of like lets them access these more creative parts of their brain, which I think is really important for, how we communicate with other people, as well as, how we come up with ideas to solving problems, and all those things. So I'd really love there to be just a lot of playful elements everywhere.
No, I think yes, there are slides on the Eco Commons. So folks,
Yes.
again, another reason to see the Patrick Doherty piece, to see the installation, and to take a slide all in one trip.
Yeah, those sound incredible.
I guess really our last question is one we ask everybody, and maybe you'll have a new answer now that we have slides, but what was your favorite Georgia Tech tradition or activity while you were here?
That's a great question. There's so many. I really I don't know if y'all still do this, or if they still do this, but I cannot remember the name of the group that did it. But they used to do High Five Fridays down Skiles Walkway. I think it. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of the group, but but it was one of the student government groups, and they'd always be out there giving high fives and just telling you to have a great day and all these things.
I mean, I like that. It sounds like you're very connected to both the energy and just that those small community building moments that seem clearly or seem very important to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, I don't think we can do High Five Friday now, but we are optimistic for the future. That if it's not there, is one to bring back. Veronica, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us. We'll drop in the chat the website for the museum so people can see virtually, and then folks who are on campus can see in person some of the work. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you everybody for joining us for Technically Creative. Hope everybody enjoys and stays safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.